In a world where talent often goes unnoticed, a homeless girl steps onto the stage at a grand charity gala, and what a billionaire says next changes everything. Stay tuned for this heartwarming tale of hope and transformation. Lila Rivers was just 12 years old, a girl with a voice that could rival the angels. Yet, life hadn't been kind to her. She lived with her mother Vanessa in a rundown shelter on the outskirts of the city. Once a promising musician herself, Vanessa had sacrificed everything after losing her husband in a tragic car accident. The grief and financial strain had driven them into poverty, forcing Vanessa to let go of her dreams. Despite their struggles, Lila clung to her passion for singing. Every morning before the city woke, she would sing on street corners, her hauntingly beautiful melodies drawing passers-by, who would sometimes leave a few coins. Her voice was her escapee, fragile yet powerful reminder of the life they once had. On the other side of the city, Victor Langston, a billionaire philanthropist, prepared for his annual charity gala. Known for his opulent lifestyle and sharp business acumen, Victor was also a man haunted by personal demons. Beneath the polished exterior lay a deep-seated loneliness that no amount of wealth could fill. His life revolved around maintaining appearances. But deep down, Victor longed for something meaningful, something real. The day of the charity gala arrived, and it was a spectacle to behold. The grand ballroom of the Langston estate glittered with chandeliers and gold accents, a testament to Victor's wealth and influence. Elite guests, dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits, mingled over champagne as a live orchestra filled the air with elegant melodies. Meanwhile, on the streets outside, Lila and Vanessa were doing their best to make ends meet. Lila had learned about the gala from a flyer someone had discarded near the... She didn't know why, but something compelled her to... With her mother's hesitant blessing, she dressed in the cleanest outfit she could find, a faded blue dress that once belonged to Vanessa, and made her way to the... Arriving at the gates, Lila felt an overwhelming mix of awe and trepidation. The towering mansion seemed like a world away from the streets. A kind security guard, noticing her earnest expression, allowed her to slip inside. She wandered through the crowd, unnoticed, until her eyes landed on the stage. Her heart raced as she approached, a simple thought guiding her. Perhaps tonight her voice might finally be... As the night unfolded, the gala was in full swing. Guests enjoyed the lavish buffet and sipped on cocktails, while Victor Langston moved through the crowd with his usual air of authority. Yet his mind was elsewhere. He was a man who had grown tired of empty conversations and superficial connect. Every year he hosted this event to raise funds for various causes, but deep down, he questioned whether any of it truly... At the edge of the room, Lila stood frozen in place, overwhelmed by the sheer magnificence around her. She clutched her hands nervously, aware of her worn dress and unpolished shoes. Just as she was about to retreat back into the shadows, a soft piano tune began to play, and the crowd turned their attention to the stage. The MC announced that the floor was open to anyone brave enough to showcase their talent in the spirit of... Lila hesitated, her heart pounding in her chest. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Never let fear silence your voice." Taking a deep breath, she stepped. As her small frame approached the stage, whispers rippled through the crowd, questioning who this unfamiliar girl could possibly be. The spotlight shone brightly on Lila as she stood at the mic, her hands trembling. The murmurs of the audience grew louder, with some guests chuckling under their breath at her appeal. Victor, intrigued by the sudden shift in atmosphere, turned his gaze to the stage. His piercing eyes narrowed as he studied the young girl, standing in front of hundreds of influential strangers. Lila closed her eyes and let out a shaky breath. Then, she began to sing. Her voice started soft, almost timid, but as the notes flowed, it grew stronger and more powerful. The room fell silent, captivated by the haunting beauty of her melody. Each note carried the weight of her struggles, her dreams, and her unwavering determination. Victor leaned forward in his seat, a flicker of something unfamiliar stirring within him. This wasn't just a performance, it was a story, a cry for something. By the time Lila finished, the room erupted into applause. But it wasn't the sound of clapping that lingered in her mind. It was the look on Victor's face, a mixture of astonishment and something deeper, as if her voice had awakened something long buried within. As the applause settled, Lila descended the stage, her heart still racing. The crowd parted as she walked, some whispering in awe of her unexpected talent, while others dismissed her as a fleeting curiosity. She reached the corner of the room, where she intended to disappear into the background once more, but fate had other plans. Victor Langston, still seated near the stage, leaned over to his assistant and muttered a few words. Moments later, the assistant approached Lila with a message. "Mr. Langston would like to speak with you." Lila froze. Why would a man like Victor Langston, known of the wealthiest and most influential people in the city, want to speak to her? Reluctantly, she followed the assistant, clutching her small bag tightly, a mixture of fear and hope swirling within her. Victor stood by a grand window overlooking the city skyline. When Lila approached, he turned to face her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he said nothing, simply observing her with a curious intensity. Then, he broke the silence. "Your voice," he said, his tone deliberate, "is extraordinary. Where did you learn to sing like that?" Lila hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. I didn't really learn, sir. It's just something I've always done. Singing helps me feel free." Her voice was quiet, almost apologetic. Victor tilted his head, intrigued by her humility. "Do you know how rare it is for someone to silence a room like you just did?" he asked. Lila shrugged, unsure of how to respond. As their conversation continued, Victor learned bits and pieces of her story. Her life on the streets, her dreams of becoming a singer, and the many obstacles that had held her back. Despite her difficult circumstances, there was no trace of bitterness in her wordsonly resilience and a quiet determination. Victor, for the first time in years, felt something stir within him. Perhaps it was admiration, or perhaps it was a pang of guilt for the privileges he had taken for granted. Whatever it was, he knew he couldn't ignore it. The next day, Lila awoke in the cramped shelter she called home. The events of the previous night felt like a dream, a fleeting moment of magic in an otherwise harsh reality. She replayed Victor Langston's words in her mind. "You have a gift. Don't let the world take it from you." But as she looked around at her surroundings, the weight of her circumstances came crashing back. Unbeknownst to her, Victor had already set a plan in motion. At his office, he called his closest confidante, Eleanor Price, a seasoned philanthropist known for her work with disadvantaged. "I met someone last night," Victor began, his voice uncharacteristically earnest. "A young girl with a voice that could move mountains. I want to help her, Eleanor, but I don't know where to start." Eleanor smiled, knowing. "Start by giving her an opportunity, Victor. Talent like that needs a stage, and someone to believe in." Meanwhile, Lila spent her day performing on street corners, her voice drawing small crowds but earning little more than a few coins. She sang not for money, but for the sheer love. Yet deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that her dreams were slipping further out of reach. Later that evening, as she returned to the shelter, she found a letter waiting for her. It was written on thick, expensive paper and bore an embossed seal. Victor Langston's. With trembling hands, she opened it. Inside was an invitation to a private audition at one of the city's most prestigious music halls. Lila's heart raced as she read the word. This was her chance, a real chance to prove her. The day of the audition arrived, and Lila stood nervously backstage. The grand music hall was a far cry from the street corner she was used. The stage lights felt blinding, and the empty seats seemed to stretch endlessly before her. But then she remembered Victor's words and her mother's unwavering belief. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the stage and began to. Her voice filled the hall, rich and resonant, carrying with it the weight of her struggles and the depth of her dreams. Victor and Eleanor watched from the wings, their expressions a mix of pride and. By the time she finished, even the most hardened critics in the audience were left speechless. Victor approached her afterward, his voice steady but calm. "You belong here, Lila. This is just the beginning." Lila's audition at the Grand Music Hall became the spark that ignited a series of extraordinary events. News of her performance spread quickly within the city's elite circle. Critics described her voice as hauntingly beautiful and a once-in-a-generation talent. For the first time in her life, Lila was being noticed not for her struggles but for her. Victor, true to his word, began pulling strings to give Lila the opportunities she deserved. He introduced her to renowned vocal coaches, arranged meetings with music producers, and even funded a professional demo. At first, Lila was overwhelmed by the sudden whirlwind of activity, but she poured her heart into every lesson and recordings. Despite her progress, the path was far from easy. The stark contrast between her new environment and her old life, often left Lila feeling like an outsider. At the music studio, she overheard whispers from other artists, questioning her presence and doubting her talent. "She's just a charity case," one of them said. The words stung, but Lila used them as fuel to prove them. Victor, observing her struggles, became a steady source of encouragement. One evening, as they sat in his office overlooking the city, he shared a rare glimpse into his own past. "When I was younger, I wasn't much different from you. I grew up with nothing, and I had to fight for every opportunity. That's why I see so much of myself in you, Lila. You remind me of what it means to dream." Their conversation deepened Lila's respect for Victor, but it also raised questions about his motivations. Why was he so invested in her success? Was it guilt, compassion, or something? These thoughts lingered in her mind as she navigated the challenges of her new life. Meanwhile, Lila's journey began to attract attention beyond the music. Journalists sought interviews, intrigued by her rags-to-riches story. At first, she avoided the spotlight, wary of how the media might portray. But with Victor's guidance, she decided to embrace her platform, hoping to inspire others who faced similar struggles. One particularly memorable interview took place on a popular talk. As Lila sat under the studio lights, the host asked, "Lila, you've gone from living on the streets to performing in some of the most prestigious venues. How does it?" Lila hesitated, searching for the right words. "It feels surreal," she said. "But I don't want people to think this is just my story. It's about everyone who has ever felt invisible or unheard. If I can make it, so can." The audience erupted into applause, and Lila realized the power of her voice extended beyond her singing. She had the ability to inspire change, not just in herself but in others. As Lila's star continued to rise, Victor's own transformation became evident. He was no longer the distant, calculating businessman he once was. Watching Lila's resilience reminded him of the values he had lost sight of in his relentless pursuit of success. His once empty mansion began to feel like a home, filled with the warmth of their shared purpose. But not everyone welcomed Lila's ascent. A rival music producer, jealous of Victor's ability to spot raw talent, began spreading rumors about her background. "She's nothing more than a publicity stunt," he claimed. The accusations threatened to tarnish her reputation and undo everything she had worked. Victor and Eleanor stepped in to shield Lila from the growing negativity. They organized a charity concert, where Lila would perform alongside some of the industry's most respected artists. The event was designed not only to showcase her talent but also to silence her critics once and as the concert approached, Lila faced her greatest challenge yet, overcoming the fear that she wasn't. On the night of the event, standing backstage and hearing the murmurs of the crowd, she felt the weight of expectations pressing down. But then she thought of her mother's words, Victor's unwavering belief in her, and the countless people who now looked up. With a deep breath, she stepped onto the stage, ready to face whatever came. The charity concert was a dazzling affair, held at one of the city's most iconic venues, the Starlight Theater. The grand chandelier sparkled overhead, casting golden hues across the elegantly dressed audience. Every seat was filled with influential figures, music critics, and devoted fans, all eager to witness Lila's debut on the grand stage. Backstage, Lila stood trembling in her sequined gown. She could hear the muffled sounds of applause as the opening act finished their set. Eleanor, ever the voice of reason, placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "This is your moment, Lila. You've earned it. Don't let fear take it from you." Victor appeared moments later, his usual composed demeanor softened by pride. "Lila," he said, his voice steady, "no matter what happens out there tonight, remember who you are. You are more than just a singer, you are a symbol of hope, and I am proud of you." As the spotlight illuminated the stage, the announcer's voice boomed across the auditorium. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the incredibly talented Lila Hart." Taking a deep breath, Lila stepped forward, the roar of applause washing over her like a wave. The music began, soft piano notes that built into a crescendo. As she sang the first line, the audience fell silent, captivated by the raw emotion in her voice. The performance was flawless, her voice weaving a tapestry of heartache, resilience, and hope. Each note seemed to carry a piece of her story, resonating with everyone, and by the time she reached the final verse, tears glistened in the eyes of many, including. But just as the applause began to swell, a commotion erupted in the back of the theater. The rival music producer who had been spreading rumors about Lila had arrived armed with a microphone and a smug expression. He interrupted the proceedings. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, Before you celebrate this so-called prodigy, you should know the truth about her. Gasps rippled through the crowd as he continued, painting Lila as a fraud who had manipulated Victor's generosity for her own gain. The tension in the room was palpable. Lila froze on stage, her earlier confidence replaced by dread. Victor, however, was quick to act. Rising from his seat, he strode to the stage and took the microphone. "Enough," he said. "You've had your moment. Now it's my turn." Victor turned to the audience, his voice calm but resolute. "I won't let this man tarnish the reputation of someone as extraordinary as Lila. What you've just heard is nothing more than envy and bitterness. Let me tell you the real story." The theater fell silent as Victor recounted Lila's journey, from the hardships she endured on the streets to the incredible determination that brought her to this stage. He shared how her voice had not only moved him, but had reminded him of the power of resilience and hope. "She didn't ask for this," Victor continued. "She didn't beg for help or try to manipulate anyone. Everything she has today, she's earned through sheer talent and hard work, and I, for one, am honored to stand by her side." The crowd erupted into applause, drowning out the rival producer, who slinked away in defeat. Victor handed the microphone back to Lila, his eyes filled with encouragement. "Sing your encore," he whispered. The orchestra began again, and this time, Lila poured every ounce of emotion into her performance. The audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering as her final note echoed through the hall. For Lila, this wasn't just a victory over her detractors, it was a triumph over the doubts and fears that had plagued her for so long. After the concert, reporters clamored for interviews, and fans crowded around to catch a glimpse of the rising star. But amidst the chaos, Lila sought out Victor. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not just for tonight, but for believing in me when no one else did." Victor smiled. "You did all the hard work, Lila. I just gave you the stage you deserved." As the night wore on, it became clear that the concert was more than just a performance, it was a turning point. For Lila, it was the moment she truly embraced her potential. For Victor, it was a reminder of the impact one person can have on another's life. As the applause echoed throughout the Starlight Theater, a wave of journalists and photographers swarmed the backstage area, desperate to capture Lila's story. But instead of basking in the spotlight, Lila sought a moment of solitude. She slipped into a quiet hallway, her mind racing with the events of the night. Victor found her sitting on a bench, still in her shimmering gown, her hands clasped tightly in her. "Lila," he said gently, "you don't have to hide. Tonight was yours, and you earned every second of it." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with conflicting emotion. "I am grateful, Victor. But what if they don't see me for who I really am? What if they only see the girl who needed saving?" Victor sat beside her, his expression thoughtful. "People will always see what they want to see, Lila. But the ones who matter, they'll see your strength, your talent, and your heart. And those are the people worth singing." His words gave her a sense of clarity. Lila took a deep breath, her resolve solidifying. "You are right. I've come too far to let fear hold me back." Meanwhile, Eleanor and the other gala organizers worked tirelessly to address the fallout from the rival producers out. They reassured the attendees that Lila's talent and integrity were beyond reproach, and many of them eagerly pledged donations to the charity in her. As the night progressed, an unexpected visitor arrived, a woman named Margaret, who had once run the orphanage where Lila spent her childhood. Margaret had recognized Lila from the promotional materials for the gala, and was moved to see how far she had. "I remember you," Margaret said, her voice tinged with emotion. "Even as a little girl, you had a spark in you.
Whoa!
I am so proud of the woman you've become." The reunion was bittersweet, stirring memories of Lila's past, but also reminding her of the resilience that had carried her through the darkest time. Margaret's words became a powerful affirmation of her journey, and Lila resolved to use her success to give back to those who shared her struggle. As the event drew to a close, Victor made an announcement that would change the course of Lila's career. Taking the stage, he addressed the audience with a confidence that commanded it. "Tonight, we've witnessed something extraordinary, a voice that transcends hardship and inspires hope. Lila Hart is not just a performer. She's a symbol of what can happen when talent meets opportunity. And that's why I am thrilled to announce that Lila will be joining Harlow Records as our newest." The audience erupted into applause, their enthusiasm echoing throughout the Grand Theater. Lila, still backstage, felt a mixture of shock and gratitude. Victor's announcement wasn't just a career milestone, it was a testament to his belief in her. But Victor wasn't. In addition, he continued, Harlow Records will be launching a new initiative to support underprivileged youth with artistic talent. We want to ensure that every Lila out there gets the chance to share their gift with the world. The announcement was met with a standing ovation, and Lila stepped onto the stage once more to join. The sight of her, standing tall and radiant, reinforced the message of the evening. Resilience and generosity could transform life. After the event, Lila, Victor, and Eleanor gathered in a private room to reflect on the night's successes and challenges. Lila's voice was soft but firm as she said, I want to be part of the initiative, Victor. I know what it's like to feel invisible, and I want to help others find their voices. Victor nodded, his respect for her. Then let's do it together. This is just the beginning. By the time the evening ended, Lila had not only solidified her place as a rising star, but had also found a renewed sense of purpose. The once homeless girl who sang on street corners was now a symbol of hope and perseverance, ready to use her platform to uplift others. The days following the gala were a whirlwind of media coverage, public interest, and new beginnings for Lila. Her story of overcoming homelessness, harnessing her raw talent, and winning over the hearts of some of the most influential people in the city captivated the nation. News outlets featured interviews with Lila, and social media buzzed with hashtags like Lila Heart and Voice of Hope. Victor, ever the strategist, carefully navigated Lila's newfound fame. He scheduled her first recording session at Harlow Records, where she worked with some of the industry's top producers. Lila's raw, soulful voice blended beautifully with the polished arrangements, creating a sound that was uniquely hers. Each session was a step forward, not just for her career but for her confidence. Meanwhile, true to Victor's promise, Harlow Records began rolling out the youth. Eleanor, who had quickly become one of Lila's closest allies, took the lead in organizing auditions and outreach programs for underprivileged. With Lila's guidance, they visited schools, community centers, and even homeless shelters, spreading the message that talent and perseverance could open doors. During one of these visits, Lila met a young girl named Mia. Mia was just 11 years old, with big brown eyes and a voice that sent chills down Lila's spine. As Mia nervously sang for the small group gathered in the community center, Lila saw a reflection of her younger. Taking Mia's hands in hers, Lila said, You have something. Never let anyone make you feel like you are not enough. It was a moment of passing the torch, of ensuring that the opportunities she had fought so hard for would continue to lift. Despite her growing fame, Lila remained grounded. She spent her free time reconnecting with people from her past, including Margaret, the woman who had cared for her during her time at the Lila visited the old weathered building where she had once dreamed of a brighter future, now determined to renovate it into a safe space for aspiring young art. Victor, inspired by Lila's vision, offered to fund the project, turning it into a collaborative effort between Harlow Records and local charities. Together they named it the Harmony House, a fitting tribute to the power of music in bridging gaps and mending broken spirits. As Harmony House began to take shape, Lila poured her energy into curating workshops, concerts, and mentorship programs. It became her sanctuary, a place where her voice wasn't just entertainment but a source of healing and inspiration for others. At the same time, Lila's relationship with Victor evolved into something deeper than just mentorship. He became her confidant, someone who truly understood her struggles and shared her vision for change. Though their bond remained professional, there was a mutual respect and admiration that underscored every decision they made. As the weeks passed, Lila's debut album, Rising Star, climbed the charts. Each track told a piece of her story, from her struggles on the streets to her triumph at the fans from all walks of life connected with her honesty, and the album's success further cemented her place in the music industry. But Lila never forgot where she came. Every performance, every interview, and every song she wrote carried the message that hope and resilience could overcome even the darkest. As the Harmony House officially opened its doors, the inaugural event was a heartfelt celebration of talent and perseverance. Lila stood on the newly constructed stage, surrounded by kids from the community, their faces lit with hope and excitement. She gave a heartfelt speech, recounting her journey from the streets to that very moment. Music saved me, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. It gave me a purpose when I thought I had none. But most importantly, it reminded me that we are never truly alone, no matter how lost we feel. The crowd erupted into applause, and Lila performed a song from her album dedicated to all the dreamers out there, titled A Light in the Dark. Her voice carried through the evening, a beacon of hope for everyone listening. Among the audience, Mia stood with her family, clutching a notebook filled with her own lyrics, inspired by Lila's words, and Victor watched from the sidelines, a rare smile on his face. It was clear that this was more than just another investment for him. It was a leg. Eleanor, ever the practical optimist, leaned over and whispered, "This is just the beginning. She's going to change lives." Victor nodded, his gaze fixed on. As the event ended, the children and their families explored the newly renovated space, filled with art rooms, recording studios, and rehearsal areas. Lila personally guided the tour, sharing stories about how each room represented a chapter in her. The recording studio, for instance, was modeled after the tiny room where she had first recorded her demo, while the rehearsal area reflected the streets where she had once sung for spare change. In the weeks that followed, the Harmony House became a bustling hub of creativity. Kids like Mia found a safe space to express themselves, while mentors volunteered their time to nurture young Lila's vision of a world where art could transcend boundaries and heal wounds was coming to. Meanwhile, her career reached new heights. Lila was invited to perform at a global charity event, where she shared the stage with some of the world's most renowned art. It was a surreal moment, but as she stood under the dazzling stage lights, Lila remained grounded by the memory of singing in the cold streets, with only the stars above to light her. Victor's involvement in Lila's projects deepened as well. He began focusing more on philanthropy, using his wealth and influence to support causes that aligned with Lila's. In doing so, he rediscovered his own purpose. The man who once viewed success as measured by numbers now found fulfillment in seeing the direct impact of his efforts on others. The bond between Lila and Victor grew stronger, built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Though their lives were vastly different, they had found common ground in their desire to give back and create meaningful change. One evening, as Lila worked late at the Harmony House, Victor arrived with a donation for the center. "This is for the next generation of dreamers," he said, placing a check on the. Lila smiled, realizing how much both of their lives had transformed since the night of the Harmony House wasn't just a place, it was a testament to the power of resilience, kindness, and second chance. It stood as a beacon of hope, not just for Lila and the children it served, but for anyone who dared to dream of a brighter tomorrow. Months passed, and the Harmony House flourished into a sanctuary for young dreamers. The walls were adorned with artwork created by the children, and the halls echoed with the sounds of music, laughter, and creativity. Lila was a constant presence, mentoring the kids, hosting workshops, and performing at fundraising events to ensure the center's sustainability. One afternoon, Lila received a letter from Mia, the shy girl who had once clutched a notebook at the gala. The letter detailed how Mia had written her first song and was preparing to audition for a local talent show. "You showed me that my voice matters," Mia wrote. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't." Reading those words brought tears to Lila's eyes. She realized that her struggles and triumphs had paved the way for others to find their own light. The journey from a homeless girl on the streets to a mentor and advocate for the arts felt surreal, yet deeply rewarding. Victor's transformation was equally profound. His days were no longer consumed by boardrooms and quarterly reports, but by meetings with nonprofits, brainstorming ways to expand his philanthropic reach. The cold, business-oriented exterior he once wore was replaced by a man who found joy in giving back. One day, Victor and Lila stood on the rooftop of the Harmony House, looking out at the city skyline. "You've built something incredible here," Victor said, his voice filled with admiration. Lila shook her head gently. "We built this together," she replied. The moment was a quiet acknowledgement of their shared journey and the bond they had. In the final scene, the Harmony House celebrated its one-year anniversary with a gala that brought together donors, artists, and the families of the children. Lila performed a new song, Echoes of Hope, dedicated to everyone who had supported her along. The lyrics spoke of resilience, community, and the power of dreams, leaving the audience visibly. As the event concluded, Lila stood surrounded by the children, their smiles a testament to the safe haven they had. Mia, now more confident, performed her original song, receiving a standing ovation from the crowd. Watching from the audience, Victor felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just for Lila, but for the lives they had both helped transform. Months later, Lila's face graced the cover of a prominent magazine, celebrating her as a changemaker in the world of arts and philanthropy. In the accompanying interview, she credited her success to the kindness of one man who had dared to believe in her potential. Victor didn't just change my life. He reminded me that we all have the power to change the world in our own way. As Victor flipped through the magazine, a rare smile crossed his face. The mansion that once felt like a gilded cage was now filled with warmth and laughter, as Lila often hosted gatherings for the children and their families. In the final moments of the story, Lila, Victor, and the children gathered for a casual evening at the Harmony House. They shared stories, played music, and reflected on how far they had all. As the camera panned out, the Harmony House stood tall, glowing against the night sky, a symbol of hope, transformation, and the magic of second chance.